Hey, what's up, everybody? It's the Two Bros Wrestling Show coming at you live. I'm talking about wrestling. I'm talking about guitars. Kevin, what's going on, man?
I am ready to talk about wrestling. I probably will let you down if I start talking specifically about guitars. So maybe let's stick to, I
No,
don't know, what do you say, Survivor Series?
Survivor Series, indeed.
Survivor Series is the main event topic tonight. As always, we will also hit a big finish where we talk about the best and worst in the Wicked Pro Wrestling. So that's where you'll probably hear us talk a little bit more about last night's Full Gear from AEW.
Indeed, you
But
will.
before we do any of that,
Fine.
Opening bell time. A little bit of news to start us off.
News?
We're going to open today's show with news on McMahon. And
Hey,
not the
remember when
one.
CM Punk was always in the news, and then it was Vince, and then everything was quiet. It wasn't Punk or Vince, and now it's back to Vince.
Actually, we're not going to be talking about the McMahon we normally start our shows with. This is the other McMahon who's married to the alleged sex trafficker.
Oh, but aren't they separated now officially?
Is it
Did
official?
I read that right? I think I read something about they're actually separated now this past week.
It probably would be good considering her new line of work to distance herself from her husband. But Linda McMahon, wife of Vince McMahon, former WWE CEO, has been tabbed by President-elect Donald Trump as his choice for Secretary of Education. Linda is a former administrator of the Small Business Association during the first term of President Trump. She's also a major Republican donor who gave $7 million to pro-Trump super PACs during Trump's first campaign for president. No word yet on what role Vince will be appointed to, but stay tuned here. We'll let you know as soon as we hear.
I'm sure it's
happening,
in the
right?
Justice Department. It's got to be something in the Justice Department.
I mean, there's apparently an opening in there, but yeah, we live in a bizarre world, but
we do indeed.
Moving to AEW, how about let's do that?
Let's do that.
Been widely reported by our show and others that both Dynamite and Collision have seen drastic declines this past year in live attendance. It's led many to believe that AEW would be better off running smaller venues. Well, this week we learned why that hasn't been the case. Reportedly, it's a logistical reason for why they play the larger venues, and it has everything to do with their set, particularly the lighting rig, apparently too large and too heavy to get into smaller buildings. That's reportedly being modified as we speak, and is expected that by going into 2025, they are going to be in a position to put themselves in right-sized venues. First signs of this may be that they already have a plan for that, because AEW is going to be running the historic Hammerstein Ballroom for 3 shows next month. Nice. Obviously, smaller historic wrestling venue, but maybe that's a sign that they've got the right size lighting rig that will allow them to not have so many obvious empty seats.
Tony.
Doug, that guy you spoke about at the beginning, that he's in the news.
The Voldemort of professional wrestling.
CM Punk.
Oh.
We're going to that one. I mean,
okay, that one works too. Sort of the Voldemort, for a while there, I guess.
Well, or maybe again, who knows? He made news this week.
Knows? Because he wasted a lot of his matches when he was in AEW, apparently.
Well, usually when I start a sentence saying that CM Punk made news this week, it is for things such as that. But this is a positive, I guess, reason. Actually, maybe I should say we have 2 CM Punk stories. One that's positive, and one's him opening his mouth and running it. So you're right on both accounts. But during an interview with Peter Rosenberg this past week, to Doug's point, for those who don't know, Punk was asked if there was anyone in AEW he didn't get to work with that he wished that he could have. And of course, there is the opportunity laid out before him to take the high road, but the always gracious Punk he did not take that opportunity, and instead began to rant about those that he did work with in AEW that he wasted matches on, in his words, people that didn't deserve it. He went on to say that those in WWE understand the business and how it works, while insinuating, of course, by pointing that out, I guess, that those in AEW, Bucks, Omega,
Hangman,
Jack Perry, Tony Khan, blah, blah, blah. They do not understand how the business works. So keep it classy.
Pretty much
Punk.
Everybody but FTR and Ricky Starks, right? Nobody else understands it but them.
Where is Ricky Starks anyway? What has CM Punk done with him?
I don't know, but he's probably trying to get him a job.
Well, speaking of, CM Punk got himself a job, and this is the other bit of news I was going to bring up about Punk. And that is that we got word this week that Punk will be joining the upcoming sci-fi horror series Revival in a recurring role. Production is currently underway in New Brunswick, Canada, on the series based on the Image comic series by Tim Seeley and Mike Norton, and there is no word on what role or character that Punk will play, but apparently it is a ongoing role. Obviously, he had one of those in Heels and acquitted himself nicely. We'll see how large this role is. Doug, you are our resident comic book geek. Are you familiar with Revival?
I am not. Gonna have to Google that right now.
And so once we know more about what role Punk will play, we will be talking about that here, I'm sure, because we just cannot stop talking about CM Punk.
Or Vince McMahon.
Let's move to neither WWE or AEW. Let's talk MLW. MLW's head of production and longtime wrestling fixture, Dave Marquez, is out of the company. The story was broken by Dave Meltzer, and MLW had a recent pay-per-view a few weeks back, Lucha Apocalypto, and it was supposed to be air. It was great. It was actually a really good show, and it was supposed to be airing live on YouTube. All their pay-per-views now air live to YouTube, except minutes before they were supposed to go on, came word that due to technical difficulties, the show would not be airing live. Instead, they released it the following day. It's assumed the production snafu is the reason for Marquez's departure, though no official word has been made. Marquez was named head of MLW production just very recently, back in June. So, I'm presuming the technical difficulties that took the whole thing offline for the audience waiting is probably the reason why he is out of that job.
He hired the AEW production staff to run the show, didn't he?
Well, they're supposedly up in their game, but maybe
it's the not necessarily AEW. What is it? The TNT, the TBS production staff that has all the snafus.
We will see if both MLW's production stays online, and then obviously with a right-sized venue, as we just spoke of, and as we reported last week, AEW upgrading all their equipment. We'll see if their production looks any better in 2025.
Except their lighting rig, which they need to downgrade.
Doesn't mean the technology downgrade, just maybe a size downgrade. And while we're talking programming, this is a good segue with programming news that will affect the majority of our international audience that may be watching us tonight. And that is WWE informed many international subscribers of the WWE Network that the network will officially close on January 1st as WWE kicks off their multi-year deal with Netflix. Outside of the U.S., PLEs will be on Netflix, as will the WWE tape library and the original programming that WWE does. All those things in the U.S., of course, will continue on Peacock at least through 2026. And there will be a few international spots where the network is expected to hang on, since those are regional deals. But once those regional deals expire, they too will shift programming to Netflix, meaning we're nearing the end of the WWE Network. I know for many of us, most of you watching, if you're watching domestically, we said goodbye a few years ago to the WWE Network, but in its international form, it's about to go away entirely. The WWE Network originally launched in 2014. Doesn't it seem that it should be longer than that it's not even 10 years?
It does, but it also seems like it's been gone for 10 years.
Yeah, that's true. For us, it's you get stories like this about the end of the WWE Network, and it's like, oh wow, yeah, I guess for most folks, it just continued as we all used to enjoy it, which really was to me the heyday of the network, more so than the Peacock version. Sorry, Peacock, but
WWE Network Peacock. Sorry.
Let's see what Netflix does with things, because there's a very good chance that once the Peacock deal expires, if the Netflix deal is going well internationally, you're probably going to see the rest of us get it that way too, which I imagine for most people who subscribe, if you're a wrestling fan and you're subscribing to Peacock, you're probably doing so for WWE. You probably already have Netflix, so this could be a potential money saver down the road if that ends up happening, like I fully anticipate it will. And Doug, before we get to our main event topic, I would like to say our final news story involves the Two Bros Wrestling Show.
Hey, wait, that's us.
That's us. And it also deals with programming news, because you do not have to wait until Black Friday for the Two Bros to get a gift for you. No, we're going to go ahead and give it to you tomorrow in the form of a special episode. The episode is a day-by-day programming guide for all wrestling programming, including all the changes that we're just now talking about. So that's why this makes a good segue. You will need to know what changes are happening to all your favorite shows, what's on when now, when you can see it all. The special episode will drop on our Facebook and YouTube channels tomorrow at 7 p.m. So watch before Raw if you just cannot wait, and watch on demand. Just pregame with us.
Pre-game with us, and refer back to it, because there's a lot moving around, and there's a lot of wrestling on every night.
Every night, and we have it night by night recapped for you in a easy to watch, handy dandy show. Take notes.
Easy to watch. All right.
And speaking of notes, Doug is pulling up his.
Oh
no, you're not wrong, Doug. I see that look of bewilderment on your face.
Just really? There's just okay. You know what I just saw? Okay, cool.
I mean,
you know me too well, friend.
It replaced his normal bewildered look with a, hey, wait a minute.
This can't be right.
There are only 3 official matches thus far announced that are official for Survivor Series, which is one of the big 4 WWE pay-per-views. There are 3, though, that are so certain in my mind, I think that we can talk about those with a certain amount of assuredness that they will happen based on the storyline. So let's go to the predicted matches, if you don't mind. I'd like to start with those 3, and then we'll get to the 3 that are official.
Let's do that. Let's go.
So the first match that I fully anticipate will be happening is your Intercontinental Champion, Braun Breaker, will be defending that title against one of the old guard, that being Sheamus. Doug, before we predict winners and losers of this one, I have to say that, one, Braun Breaker, obviously young upcomer, we're really high on him on the show, but I don't know. Sheamus is just one of those that I think maybe we take a little bit for granted just because he's been around so long. I was surprised when researching some of this to find that Sheamus has been in WWE for like nearly 2 decades, and yet somehow has never, ever held the Intercontinental Championship. This is the one title. Yes. He's been a 3-4 time world champ, U.S. champ. I mean, he needs the Intercontinental to be that Triple Crown singles wrestler. So whether it's Braun Breaker or someone else down the line, I have a feeling that Sheamus will continue to target the IC title just for that completion element of it. I don't think, though, that considering Braun Breaker won the title, lost the title, won the title back, I don't know that they will continue to hot potato him. So I don't know that Sheamus gets it here.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either, but I did not realize that he never held that title. Interesting.
Yeah, totally shocked me. And that actually shocked me, but I guess, much like we were saying earlier with the WWE Network, how time is moves very surreally.
Right, yeah.
Has it really been 20 years of Sheamus? I mean, I knew he'd been around a while, but has he really been around 20 years? Yeah, he's been around 20 years.
20 years of Sheamus is totally an album title.
And it really, I mean, back to the guitars.
Yeah.
But you do take Sheamus for granted because he's just kind of there. He's always solid. You never think of him necessarily as that main guy, but he slots in as a main guy when they need him to. He's always upper mid card. But I think these two would have a good match. I think that working with veterans like Sheamus is what's going to keep Braun getting better. And I think this is the one that could steal here. I honestly think this could be a surprise.
Love Breaker. I still think they should just call the kid a Steiner, but whatever. He's Braun Breaker. But I was reading earlier today, that I guess Braun is slotted in as neither a heel or babyface. He's kind of that fluid tweener, and the plans are to keep him that way for the foreseeable future.
It is interesting because at first I thought they were just mixed up on what they wanted to do with the character, because they presented him very, very clearly as a heel.
Yeah.
And then they did what seemed to be a babyface turn, only to backtrack on it. So that makes some sense that maybe they couldn't make up their mind and decided to land somewhere in the middle with him.
I think they're going to try and do like the Stone Cold thing where he's, the tweener, but I don't know. I think he makes a great heel, and of course, I think eventually he can make a great baby face too. So, let's let the kid do both.
It will make a great fight because just the taste we got on Raw on Monday between these two, they had chemistry together. So if you gave them more a wider parameter to run with, I think they'll do excellent. So looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
This next one I think is also very likely to happen as well, and that is a World Tag Team title match. You have the soon to be broken up Judgment Day, and so I think that they're going to be in the mix with Finn Balor and JD McDonough, and the War Raiders have earned themselves a title shot. So I expect the triple threat for the tag titles, and I'm predicting Eric and Ivar here because it seems like the reconstituted War Raiders, and thank goodness they're not the Viking Raiders
experience.
Yeah, the Viking experience. I think that Triple H, who is the king of reboots, rebooted these guys back to something very similar to what they were when they left Ring of Honor and what they were at NXT. To begin with, before they started tinkering with them. And they've been giving them some pretty decisive victories. So I think that I really feel like they're going to switch the titles on us here. I think that we got a chance to see the War Raiders become the champions. But if this match happens, as it seems like it's going to at some point in time, and since they do need to pad out this card, Survivor Series may be when it happens. This tag title match, Doug, do you see Judgment Day retaining, or do you see either of the other teams I mentioned walking away?
I see a lot of implosions with these other teams. Judgment Day is kind of flirting with an implosion itself, and true. New Day, I see New Day's wait, is there like a 10-year like New Day celebration coming up soon? When is that? Because that seems like the perfect time for them to completely implode. Yeah, so if they're going to do that, I think they've been teasing that forever anyway, so we need to see that happen. So and who was the other team? Did you mention the other team besides the Raiders?
And the champs, the Judgment Day.
Yeah, the champs. But,
don't forget the champs.
But that's what I'm saying. Judgment Day and New Day both. I think both of those could break apart. So it makes sense for the War Raiders, and I would love to see them with the title as the not the Viking experience or the Viking Raiders, or Vince McMahon presents the Viking experience or whatever they were.
Can
Let's
you
see
believe,
War Machine?
Though, I mean, considering how long it was that they have been under the WWE banner and the way that they have spent most of that time under the banner, are you surprised to see them poised to perhaps be the next champs? It really felt like they were never going to amount to anything on the main roster. So this would be really kind of cool to see.
I agree. I would love to see that.
And something else that I think that you would love to see, I know I would love to see it. It's not official yet, but of the 3 matches that I am predicting, this is the one I'm thinking is the most bankable of the 3 for happening. And that is because Cody Rhodes has not been on a pay-per-view in quite some time. As far as the main pay-per-views, you got to have Rhodes on there. And the work he's doing right now with Kevin Owens, who always brings his A game.
Always.
I mean, the promos Kevin Owens is cutting as the heel bad guy who in his heart believes he is in the right and sells it so very well, just like a supervillain.
Exactly like specifically a DC supervillain. The only Marvel supervillain I can think of other than Thanos in the movies is, comic book wise, Magneto. Completely justified in everything he's doing because he is the hero of his story. He is not the villain. And Steen, Kevin Owens is doing the same thing here. He is the hero in this. Cody is totally in the wrong. So I don't disagree with it, especially when he shows up as Homelander. But
I mean,
that's just me.
I think this match is happening, and I mean it's moving forward so fast. There's really no other spot to have it unless they save it for Royal Rumble, which is not till February. I think this match happens at Survivor Series. I think that probably becomes official tomorrow night on Raw. And as great as it is to think about, and as great a match as it will be, and as great a work as Kevin Owens is doing, I think that it's pretty safe bet that Cody Rhodes is not losing to Kevin Owens.
Yeah. Cody's not losing, but
I mean,
still,
it'll
be fine.
We love Kevin Owens around these parts. But do you feel like the window for like world title Kevin Owens, like that's almost like we're talking 5-6 years ago now that he was really a legit threat to that championship in WWE?
Yeah, but 20 years and Sheamus has never held a title. So, or the title we were talking about earlier. So, maybe it comes around again. I mean, it's
hope so.
Yeah, but this isn't that time. Definitely.
They obviously think, just like they do with Sheamus, that Kevin Owens is the veteran hand now that you can trust to slot in to a main event spot, even when you don't keep him near the main event most of the time. And people just, buy into it because they love Kevin Owens. And why shouldn't
they? Absolutely.
With that, Doug, let's get into the 3 matches that were actually official. 3 matches that are official. I mean, that's not even that's not even a pre-show for Tony Khan. So.
No, it's not.
Obviously, one of the reasons for that is that Survivor Series over the last couple of years has gone from the traditional Survivor Series style matches to Survivor Series WarGames, which, while maybe not the traditional Survivor Series match, are still multi-person matches that are elimination style, and therefore they take a while to play out. I don't know what you think, Doug. I never was a fan of the original Survivor Series concept of 5 people who are together for no real reason other than maybe they're all faces or maybe they're all heels. There's nothing on the line. So I much prefer the spectacle that is WarGames to traditional gobbledygooker style Survivor Series.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to put 5 guys in blue shirts versus 5 guys in red shirts and see what happens. And this is, I mean, get some guys in there that have beef and let them just, work it out. So much better like this.
And because you have 2 of these gimmick style matches, they will be
guys and gals who have beef.
I figure that one's going to open and one's going to close just to keep them separate, since they're going at least 30 minutes, maybe 45 a piece. So let's start with the one that to me is more traditional Survivor Series in just the fact that there's not necessarily the the beef that is there. I mean, they've manufactured a bit of it, but there's a faction war that's going on in the men's match. Not so much for the women, which is a little more maybe contrived, but still should be entertaining because of the women involved. It's Rhea Ripley with Bianca Belair, Naomi, Io Sky, and Bayley taking on the female members of Judgment Day, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae. I know. I think are we fair to say before we predict winners that poor Candice is getting the first pin?
Yes. I hate that.
I mean, Mrs. Wrestling deserves better, but when you look at the other ladies here, the star powers, like as I'm reading them off and I get to Candice's name, I'm like, oh yeah, the poor Poison Pixie, she's getting pinned first.
She's so getting pinned first, but at least she's not getting the Indy Hartwell treatment. So
that's true. Ouch.
Yeah, I mean,
Doug, I think these matches can be difficult to project just because there's not necessarily something at stake. But I'm going to go with the faces in this one just because. Just because. I mean, we did a pivot to get Jade out of there. And I don't know if that is a storyline to save her for some reason for this match, or if it's we don't trust her yet to the multi-person, there's a lot going on, people could get hurt, let's protect her by taking her out of it. Do you have a thought on that?
Because I have read that there is a unconfirmed legit injury keeping her out of this, but
here we go.
Everywhere I've read about this, it's unconfirmed. It's like somebody told somebody, but they can't get that second source. No wrestling journalist can seem to pick up that second source to get a confirmation of yes, that's legit. So I'm not sure.
So let's do this then. If Jade is out of it for either storyline reasons or a legit reason, the fact that she's out of it, does that change the equation for you as far as who you think might come out on top? Is that an opportunity for, and let's just be as fair to the faces as we were to the heels. If Candice LeRae is the first woman out, Naomi's getting a pin here on the face side probably first.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Is it who's coming out on top then? The faces or the heels?
I do like the idea of the faces coming out on top. But I have to wonder: is there an opportunity here because there are two world champions in this match?
That's where I was going next. That's where I was going next.
Is it Tiffy time?
So with something like a WarGames, it isn't just about who wins and loses because it is the spectacle of the giant cage, all the plunder, the double rings. I mean, they are fun, but because they are in the end of the at the end of the day, they're kind of inconsequential as far as the actual outcome. The main thing for most of the people involved in these, it's kind of like a Royal Rumble situation. Yes, there is a winner, then that is consequential. But for an hour before then, you set up a lot of storylines. You got a lot of people here in storylines you can set up. You have the eventual breakup of Jade and Bianca, which may already be at play because of the injury angle. But to your point, we've been getting lots of teases, and the crowd is so hot for Tiffy. Does she take a chance at turning on Nia, or does she go for the presumably easier target of Liv Morgan? I think that when it happens, it's going to be Nia because I think Liv's got her own thing going real well over on the Raw side. Do you think that this is when Tiffy? I know they'll tease it. They'll at least tease it. Somebody's going to be down. Tiffy's going to be clutching that briefcase and considering it. And Nia's either going to, instruct her to do so on a Liv Morgan or, hey, don't you dare look at me that way.
That's a very good point because, it is a WarGames match, so she can just carry that right in there and use it as a weapon throughout the night, and nobody will think anything about it. But, of course, it's always there to be, cashed in at any time.
I think just to give a little bit more weight to a Survivor Series WarGames match, it would be cool if they do the cash in at some point in the match. I'm not saying they will, but if I had to put money on it, I say that Tiffy does cash in. And I think when Tiffy cashes in, Tiffany Stratton is going to be your new champion.
I would love to see that. Love to see it.
The roof will come off if that happens.
Oh, absolutely.
On Nia. It'd be a good reset going into 2025, starting a feud between those two and have that breakup. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it. Tiffy, the faces win, and Tiffy takes the title from Nia.
I like it.
Make it so.
Make it so. Let's make it happen.
Let's go for one of the matches that will not be ending just because we have to have those WarGames matches separate. I think that, and it's weird to think these are not popcorn matches. These are world title matches, but we definitely have a rematch for the World Men's Championship. It's a rematch from SummerSlam where Gunther defeated Damien Priest for that title. This is Damien's rematch, as it were. And I don't know. This one, I love Gunther. I think that he's got more work that can be done. I'm not sure that WWE, I don't know how they feel how it's going. And in some ways, it felt like the Damien Priest drop maybe was too soon in his reign. So I don't know that they couldn't just go either way with this one. I don't feel very strongly about this one way or the other. My heart wants it to be Gunther, just like it was that night I was in the building watching Gunther wrestle Damien Priest. I was rooting for Gunther. I'm going to be rooting for Gunther again, but there's just part of me that thinks that Damien is he's still going to be world title material. Maybe not right now, but they could make the switch right now. I don't know. What do you think?
Man, I don't know. That's hard because, like I said, I want to be Gunther. But, I think there is a cool factor with Priest. You put a title back on him going into 2025. I see a lot more merch being sold with the former Punishment Martinez there, and more money in him. So if we're talking from a corporate standpoint, maybe it's time for Gunther to drop that and give it to him. But in my heart of hearts, I still want it to be Gunther too.
Yeah, I'm going to go Gunther, but I'll go with my heart. But
same.
I don't feel so strongly about this that it would surprise me if they go the other way. And for the record, I think Damien Priest is really upped his game from the old Punisher Martinez days. So I have no problem with him being the center point of a show and being a champion. I just want to see Gunther have a little bit longer of a run.
Yep.
And that brings us to the one match, Doug, that is going to definitely close things out. And is the one match that I think, as far as the WarGames concept goes, you could say warrants the gimmick match because it's basically a faction feud that has been ongoing. So unlike the women's where we had to, make some storylines where these women come in opposition to one another. This is what we've been working on for a very long time now, and that's the civil war of the old and the new bloodline. They did, for the concept, have to pad it out with some non-bloodline members on either side, but that might be the stretches here.
Sammy's an Uso, man. Come on.
Hey, Sammy. Oh, no, Sammy is not the one I'm referring to. Sammy Uso's in, man. But yeah, we have just to make sure we spell it out for everyone that watching at home. It is Roman Reigns and the Usos, along with Sammy Uso. And wait a minute, that can't be right. CM Uso. Who's that?
I hear he's a Paul Heyman guy.
I will accept it because it got Paul Heyman back on my television, and CM Punk is a Paul Heyman guy, so sure, why not? I mean, you need a little help.
It makes sense, and I like the swerve. I've got to say, I really love the swerve because you bring in, the big boy from the other side. He's not Samoan, but New Zealand close enough to Samoa, I guess.
Yeah. For the sake of completion, yes, it is Sikoa, Jacob, Fatu, Tamatanga, Tongaloa, and then Bronson Reed. Because we're apparently out of camera ready Usos or Fatus at this stage of the game. They're all still in developmental.
No Zilla, no Hikaleu,
He looks the part at least, and they have built him up over the last few months to be something more than the mid-carder that he was, and he has a history with the addition on the face side of things. Like he's had an ongoing feud with Seth Rollins. So, and who obviously has had his problems with both CM Punk and, and Bronson. So he has a problem with like Roman, and he's got at least a few of his opponents that he's got issues with, and a few of his teammates, which he has issues with. I think that's where this heads. I think that despite the star power involved on the face side, I feel that it makes more sense for the young bloodline who needs to win more to come out on top of a match that doesn't mean as much. For later on down the line, when Roman gets his ultimate revenge and it means something, that's when it's going to be a one-on-one situation and not a multi-person match where you have Bronson Reed and CM Punk involved. I think the faces implode, and I think just like I was saying with the females, Doug, I think that you get a welcome to the Netflix era storyline. This is the new season here. We get some stories coming out of this.
So here's my question. I mean, we're basically into a blood feud here with the bloodline. What happens at the end of this, regardless of who comes out on top? Do those like the whatever it is, the thing,
the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yeah, is that like is that on a pole in this match, or what's going on there, or is it just like beat the hell out of the other team and call it a win? I mean, at the end of this, I mean, I get what we're building up to here and why we're here, but what are the consequences of either side actually winning? I don't think that's ever been clearly spelled out in any of this.
That's because at this point, there are no clear stakes to winners and losers here other than bragging rights. Eventually, I don't think they'll, please God, don't put anything on a poll. But I do think eventually you're going to get to a Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa for your the winner is the tribal chief, and the family will, we will sit down at the table and everyone will acknowledge the fact that whoever comes out on top, the rest of the family will fall in line. But we are not there yet in Survivor Series, and this multi-person matchup style is not the place to do that. So I think this is just a continuation of the story. And for the story to continue, the young guys who really don't have the same amount of star power, they have to come out on top here in order to look like a threat. I mean, you got CM Punk coming back with Paul Heyman. You got Roman back in the, getting his hands on this young pretender. It's just too easy to do it right now. They should come out on top, which is why they won't. The question is going to be, is the other old school member of the bloodline who has teased his appearance, and we have to figure at some point it's going to factor back in. Is this one of those spots where The Rock makes a return?
Right. And does the final boss show up and say, okay, enough of this. I'm uniting the family. I'm bringing everybody together. And like Solo says, we will run this company for decades now. I already said on the board.
So where do you go as far as prediction goes, Doug?
I think
OGs or New Bloods?
No, because I agree. The New Bloods, Tamaloa needs to pin somebody and not go out first. But I mean, the New Blood will come out on top. I do like that idea because I think, we almost got the stage set with Punk showing back up and, first Roman mouthing, "What are you doing here?" And Punk, moving over. There's still time. There's still time, Scott. But when Punk's like, hey, oh no, it's Roman that first says he's my wise man. He mouths that, and then Punk says, "We'll see." I'm like, okay, you just set up something between them. They're gonna put Paul Heyman on a pole and wrestle for him, maybe. I don't know.
And Seth Rollins and CM Punk have a history where they still need to really sort that one out, and that nothing's definitive or decided with those two. So I think that CM Punk CM Punk and Seth Rollins are the wild cards here. Sammy is the good Uso soldier who will do everything in his power. But I don't think that Seth and CM Punk are going to be able to have that same focus, and therefore will not toe the family line, and they will go their own direction for whatever is best for them, and that's probably going to be beating the heck out of one another. So new bloods are going over here, and maybe a Rock return.
Maybe. We'll see.
And with that, that is the Thanksgiving tradition of Survivor Series WarGames. Obviously, there's only 3 matches that are official, but 3 that we think are very likely to happen next Sunday night. When we meet you again, we will have a recap of all of not just winners and losers to see how we did on our predictions, but were there cash-ins? Was there a Rock cameo? I think that, Doug, for me, a lot of what we have with Survivor Series as far as intrigue is not really the winners or losers. It is what happens during the courses of these contests, who aligns with whom, and what storylines do we have coming out of it, and do we get any cash-ins and surprise cameos and that sort of thing. So I think that's where the action is going to be to watch next Saturday night.
Yeah, it'll be fun for sure.
And then you come back on Sunday and talk about it with us.
There you go.
We're going to hit our big finish, Doug, because, yes, we're talking Survivor Series. We didn't do a review of last night's pay-per-view from AEW, but Survivor Series isn't the only pay-per-view happening around the holidays that we want to discuss. I know that my big finish is full of full gear material. I presumed yours would be. I was hoping it would be. So let's start first with the botch of the week.
So for me, AEW has such an excellent women's roster that is, I don't know what Tony does with them, but to know that Deonna Purrazzo had to fight for a match to get on the card and then lost her match that she had to fight to actually get on there, and just what was that, like one of 2 matches on that. What's going on, Tony? Come on, man. You're botching your entire women's division right now. You can do better. This is my botch of the week of probably the past 6 months, if we're being honest about it. Tony can do better with that entire women's division than he has to.
So, funny thing, my botch of the week, it's coming at a very similar thing from just a very different angle. So for me, the botch of the week is a 5.5-hour full gear. If you add to the beginning the hour and a half pre-show and then the 4 hours they were actually on pay-per-view, you're talking 5.5 hours of full gear. And as much as we love wrestling, obviously we're 2 old guys here rambling about wrestling on the interwebs. We love wrestling. More is more in general, but 5.5 hours is committing your entire day. A good portion of your waking hours to one event, which is not fair for the fans. It burns them out, but it's really not fair for your talent. Because there was some action that happened last night that was really good, that wasn't getting the reactions in the building that I thought it probably deserved. And I put my money on the fact that's because that building was tired. And I especially called out here for my botch of the week, how unfair it was, to circle back around to Doug, how unfair it was to Deonna Purrazzo and to Anna Jay that they're the first match up on a 5.5-hour show, when Excalibur has to explicitly say on commentary, fans are still filing into the building to cover for the fact that hard camera, it was obvious 70% of the people that should have been in those seats were not yet in those seats. So these two women who both deserve better are playing in front of nobody. And they both have such serious upsides that it just defines them down in a way that Tony Khan shouldn't want to do and could easily avoid doing if he had a 4-hour show instead of a 5.5-hour show, and make 3 of that the pay-per-view and 1 hour your pre-show, and make sure everybody's in their darn seats before you start the thing.
And how about we
people don't show up is because they know that they have to pace themselves. Why would you show up that early?
And how about some segments that could clearly wait till a Wednesday night or even a Saturday night on Collision? You know, like the whole. I mean, first I'm calling them out for needing to do better. Yes, she would absolutely. But now we've got a champagne segment that could. It looked awesome. It looked great.
No, it did,
it could have been on a Wednesday night. There was a TV. Yeah. That was a TV moment, not a pay-per-view moment.
You know, I could give Tony a bit of a pass back when he wasn't running pay-per-views every month. That, okay, he has a roster that is only seen once a week when it was, just Dynamite. Right. And so when we got to our bi-monthly, quarterly at one point in time, when we got to the big events, they had to be everybody on them. But now you're running monthly just like WWE does. You don't have to have everybody on every show. Less can be more. Triple H has certainly learned that lesson by trying to keep to tight 3-hour shows, sometimes 2.5, stretching to 4 if it's a Mania. But other than that, he's been really disciplined. SummerSlam was 4, but again, it's one of the big ones. And it wasn't even quite 4. And here, just on a random November night, when you're running a Full Gear, and that's no offense to Full Gear, which was a great show, 5.5 hours. Again, let that sink in. That is a Wrestle Kingdom. That is a WrestleMania. That is not a Full Gear. All right, rant over.
Yeah, old man yelling at clouds. All right,
let's talk performance of the week.
So I've got to say, I gave the celebrity match with this person I never heard of a lot of grief last week, man. I still don't know who this guy and his kids are. However, QT Marshall, performer of the week, without a doubt. He took this and just made it work. Made this dude. Apparently, the other guy was a former wrestler. Of course, he hasn't been in the ring for like 20 years. QT made him. It was kind of like a slow old school match, really. In a lot of parts. But QT made it work. So kudos to you, QT. And apparently, it was his idea to bring this guy in. And while we don't know who this dude is, apparently,
he was over, man. They were
so over. So this brought so many eyes to the pre-show, which I don't know if it actually increased the buys for the pay-per-view, but so many additional eyes to the pre-show that would never have watched AEW or have watched and then let it lapse, but again are familiar with this guy and his whole like shtick. So kudos to you, QT. I stand corrected with all the trash I was talking last week about this nonsense, but I'm still not a fan of celebrity wrestlers.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Of course, Jake Paul or Logan Paul. Of course, Jake is, I'm sure, on his way to WWE now, too.
I'm glad you brought it up because, we did poke quite a bit of fun of it last week, and I don't understand who they are, what's the bit with the cookies? I don't understand any of it.
I don't.
But the people in the building sure did, and that's all that matters.
Yes.
And so I expect Doug's Rizzler shirt is probably in the mail. He just didn't get it in time to wear it tonight.
No, I just had to go Wu-Tang tonight instead of Rizzer.
The Rizzler. He's the Rizzler, the little kid that's doing the bell and rubbing his face for some reason. But anyway,
I don't get it.
Good call out. My performance of the week, and this is only because it was so close to being my match of the week, but it's not. But I want to give a special call out to Mercedes Monae. Last week on the show, we said, Mercedes, I ask you, has Mercedes Monae had her signature match yet on a roster where, to be honest, she has underwhelmed when you compare what she did in New Japan, especially with what you compare she did in WWE and NXT? Well, I stand corrected and give my apologies to Mercedes and obviously a co-credit to Chris Statlander. Man, that match, that she has had her signature match now. She definitely is answered any detractors who say that she has underwhelmed since coming to AEW. This might be what has unlocked her, because this was her signature match. I am ready for a rematch. These two women tore it down for 20 minutes. Tore it down.
And I've been thinking about this since that match. Is it because Monae finally found that second gear? She finally leveled up in AEW, or is it because Statlander, brought her there? Just like you were talking about QT in the last match, where he brings it up a level. I mean, clearly not to that level, not at all. But is that Statlander? Has Mercedes not found that person to really click with and have that chemistry? Did we just find our young blood savage, feud here with her in AEW?
When you put it like that, think about what she did before. Yes, she could have good matches with just about anybody, but her classic matches were with Charlotte, with Becky, with Bayley, with the ones she came up with. She's learning a whole new roster, and I think she found her chemistry lab partner here, because she and Chris Statlander were magic. It was all I could do to not give them my match of the week, but then another match happened. I'm like, hang on it. Hang on it. I really wanted to give the women some credit and things. So, Doug, let's talk match of the week. And if you disagree with me on mine, I'm going to call you a liar. But go ahead and tell us what our match of the week is.
Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge the work that Moxley, and more importantly, not Moxley, but Orange Cassidy put in last night. Cassidy, my goodness, the one spot where he gets thrown into the steel steps and there's just blood all over his steel steps when he makes contact with it. That's some beautiful wrestling right there. However, it does not beat being tombstoned onto those steps from the ring apron onto it does not beat that. We knew before just on paper, the Protostar and the Aerial Assassin. Come on, we knew this was going to be great. I did not think I would see things that I saw there, and that ending, the way it ends. It hurts me. I have neck problems after watching that ending.
I honestly thought that it would have been the match of the night, even without those spots. You could make an argument that the one from the ring apron that was a jumping, for those that didn't see it, it was a jumping tombstone pile driver from the apron to the ring steps. So I'm not sure that was the smartest move to do. It sure looked fantastic, though. You can't argue with that.
It looked,
but the whole match was just absolutely off the charts. It blew everything else away, and there was already some great matches. The aforementioned Mercedes Monae Statlander match being one of them. There were some good things to come. Like you said, the main event was a very different style. Ricochet and Takeshita were great as well, but nothing measured up to what Fletcher and Will Ospreay did. And we should point out, and this is a spoiler if you didn't see it, Will Ospreay, the man you're building the company around, actually took the loss. What do you think of that, Doug? Is that good business? Is it? I mean, Fletcher's a made man now, though, right? Because everyone's talking about Kyle Fletcher today.
And I think it shows how selfless that Ospreay is. Ospreay is one of those guys that Punk's talking about that gets the business. Ospreay gets the business. He just elevated his friend, someone he has mentored. He elevated this kid, like you said. He's a made man.
Made man, and earned every bit of it with the performance last night. We all knew he was good, and we all know what Ospreay can do. So Ospreay doesn't need the win. I thought he would get the win just because he's Will Ospreay, and he is the future of AEW. It's obvious they're building around him, but it's obvious they also think that he can sustain a loss and not lose anything. Eventually, you're going to get Ospreay, Moxley, Omega probably coming back, getting involved somewhere down the mix, in the mix. But I think further down the road, it's maybe Ospreay who's the one to. I mean, he is the baby face's baby face.
He really is, and and I do like that, because I think we haven't even talked about Swerve. I know we can't get in all these matches, but Swerve loses nothing by losing. Spoilers, but just like Ospreay lost nothing by losing to Swerve a few pay-per-views back.
He still will Ospreay, but he has taken a couple of high-profile losses on pay-per-view, so they probably do need now to put him on a bit of a winning streak to get him sort of course corrected. But for one night, he chose to sacrifice himself to make Kyle Fletcher a star, and now I can't wait to see what Kyle Fletcher does. It was a good night for the Don Callis Society.
It really, and no interference by anybody from that family.
They were all, man. That's how you really make somebody, giving them those kind of wins. If you'd had Ospreay could have gone out on his back with interference, Don Callis getting involved. There's a number of ways he could have had an out for losing, but he knows, because again, he knows the business. You got that part right. He knows the business, and he knew that it would mean more for Kyle Fletcher's future if Kyle Fletcher went over strong.
Clean win in the middle of the ring after dropping him on his head on a turnbuckle. And before that, dropping him on his head.
On the steps outside. Go watch this match. Doug and I are in agreement. This was by far the match of the week by a sizable margin. I'm glad that we got into, since we didn't do a full review, I'm glad we got into a lot of the action and a lot of the results from Full Gear. It is worth your time. But if you see two matches, I say make it that women's match with Monae and Statlander, and make it the men's match with Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. You would, the rest is great. There's a lot of good to be had. But if you have time for watch 2 of the 5.5 hours, the 2 matches I would pick would be those 2. Make sure you see them.
Yeah, and that's about an hour of matches right there with those 2 matches.
And that is the hour that I would concentrate on, because you will not waste a minute of that hour if you watch those 2 contests. And with that, we have both really reviewed Full Gear and previewed Survivor Series for you, gone over the week's news, told you what was what we liked, what we didn't like for the week. Now, we would like to remind you that please feel free to join us tomorrow night when we have a special episode dropping. And it's Thanksgiving week. Watch it anytime this week. Watch it in 2 weeks. Watch it in January when you need to remember where everything is by the time the calendar rolls around, because we have a lot of changes coming. We have it all covered for you in a special episode that we're dropping tomorrow. Catch the bonus episode of What's on Win Now. We are back live at our regular time next Sunday here on Facebook. If you join us live at 8 p.m. Eastern time, where we will talk about all the matches we just previewed for you to see what actually happens at Survivor Series and what you all think about it. So you'll want to tune in for that and let us know what you think.
Let us know.
Until then,
go watch some wrestling. Night, everybody.